The house was eerily silent, each tick of the clock echoing in the empty rooms. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, waiting for Mia to come home. The weight of loneliness pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. Where was she? Why did it feel like an eternity since she last walked through that door? My thoughts spiraled, chasing each other in a frenzied dance, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something important was missing from my life. Then, just as I was about to drown in my thoughts, there was a knock on the door. It startled me, pulling me from my reverie. Who could it be? I opened the door to find Leo standing there, his brow furrowed in concern. "Hey, I was worried about Mia," he said, his voice steady but soft. Something in his gaze held me captive for a moment. "I thought she would be back by now," I replied, forcing a smile. "She must have lost track of time." But even as I said it, I felt a flicker of unease. Leo stepped inside, shaking off the chill of the evening. "You know, she often stays late at the park with her friends. Kids do that, right? They lose themselves in their little worlds." His attempt to lighten the mood made me chuckle, a brief respite from my anxiety. "Yeah, she does. It's like time doesn't exist for them," I said, trying to match his lighthearted tone. "But it's hard for us, isn't it? Waiting and hoping they come back safe." "Exactly," Leo said, his eyes meeting mine. There was something electric in that moment, a spark of understanding that passed between us. It makes you realize how fragile everything can be. I nodded, but as I did, the conversation took a turn. "You ever feel like you're just going through the motions?" I asked, surprising even myself with the depth of my question. "Like you living for someone else and not for yourself?" Leo's expression shifted, and I could see him contemplating my words. "Yeah, I get that," he said slowly. "Sometimes, I think we forget what we want. We get so caught up in responsibilities and expectations." His honesty struck a chord within me. "I know I have," I admitted, feeling a warmth spread through me. "It's like I'm a shadow of who I used to be." We fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that felt safe yet charged with something unspoken. It was then, as we stood closer than I would have expected, that our arms brushed against each other. In that split second, a rush of longing flooded my senses, igniting feelings I thought I had buried deep inside. "What is this?" I thought, my heart racing. Was it wrong to feel this way? Leo's presence was so comforting, so invigorating. It was a feeling I had not experienced in ages. "Do you ever think about what you really want?" he asked, breaking the spell. I could hardly breathe, caught between the thrill of his question and the fear of what it meant. I don't know," I stammered, my pulse quickening. "Maybe I've forgotten how to want anything for myself." "Maybe it's time to remember," he said softly, his eyes searching mine. The weight of his words settled around us, thickening the air. Just then, the sound of a key turning in the lock jolted me back to reality. The door swung open, and Mia stepped inside, her laughter spilling into the room. The spell was broken, and the moment we shared faded like a distant memory. "Mom, I'm home," she called, breaking through the tension. I glanced at Leo, who offered a small, understanding smile. "Hey, kiddo," I replied, forcing cheer into my voice. But inside, I felt a storm brewing. What had just happened? And why did I feel more alive in that fleeting moment than I had in years? As I sat alone in the dim light of the living room, the echoes of my earlier conversation with Leo replayed in my mind. His eyes had sparkled with understanding, and for a brief moment, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. But with that warmth came a chill of guilt. I thought of Alan, my husband, and the loyalty I had promised him. How could I even consider the feelings Leo stirred within me? I glanced at the family photos on the wall. There we were, Alan and I, beaming with joy on our wedding day. I remembered the laughter that filled our home during those early years, the warmth of love that wrapped around us like a cozy blanket. But now, it felt like an old song, played out and faded. The coldness that had settled between us was like a heavy fog, and I couldn't help but question what had gone wrong. Why can't we go back to that? I whispered to myself. There had been a time when Alan and I were inseparable, when he could make me laugh until I cried. But over the years, the laughter had quieted, replaced by the mundane routines of life. I closed my eyes, and memories washed over me like waves. I thought of our late-night talks, the way his smile could light up the darkest days. But then I remembered the silence that often lingers now, the way we dance around each other, careful not to touch the raw spots that have formed over time. Is this what I want? I asked aloud, feeling the weight of uncertainty settle heavy on my chest. What would it mean to choose Leo? To embrace the spark he ignited within me? I shivered at the thought. The memory of Leo's laughter echoed in my mind, a stark contrast to the stillness of my home. He had a way of making everything feel alive, of drawing out sides of me that I thought were long gone. His attention made my heart race, and I found myself craving more than just his company. It was a hunger I struggled to understand. But I couldn't ignore the reality of my situation. I had a family. I had Mia, my sweet daughter, who deserved a stable home and a happy mother. But as I sat there, the magnetic pull towards Leo felt stronger than my sense of duty. I felt desperate, longing for something more, something vibrant and full of life. Why is it wrong to want to feel alive? I pondered. The thought scared me. I had never been one to stray from my commitments. Yet, here I was, on the brink of crossing a line I had promised myself never to approach. Just as I was lost in these thoughts, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I picked it up and saw a message from Leo. Hope Mia made it home okay. I'm here if you want to talk. My heart raced as I read his words. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of him reaching out, yet a wave of guilt crashed over me. How could I even consider talking to him when I was married? I typed a quick reply, she's home. Thanks for checking in. But my finger hovered over the keyboard as I contemplated telling him how I really felt. The temptation to share my internal struggle was almost overwhelming. I stared at the message, torn between my loyalty to Alan and my growing feelings for Leo. This isn't fair, I muttered to myself. Why do I feel so alive around him? I felt my phone buzz again, and I quickly glanced at the screen. No pressure, just thinking of you, Leo wrote back. The warmth of his concern sent a flutter through my chest, igniting the yearning I thought I had buried. As I sat there, the internal battle raged on. Should I continue to hold on to the past with Alan, or should I explore the possibilities that Leo offered? The desire to cross boundaries loomed larger than I could ignore, fueled by a sense of desperation for something more than just existence. In that moment, I realized I was at a crossroads. The weight of my choices pressed down on me, and I knew I had to confront my feelings. But the fear of what could happen next, the fear of losing everything I held dear, was almost paralyzing. Can I really do this? I whispered, feeling the air grow thick with tension. The answer was unclear, but deep down, I knew I was standing on the edge of a decision that could change everything. The evening stretched on, and the stillness of the house seemed to throb with tension. I found myself pacing the living room, my thoughts swirling around the idea of Leo. I could still feel the warmth from our last conversation, the way his laughter danced in the air, filling spaces I had almost forgotten existed. It was a strange mix of excitement and dread, like standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap. Then, out of nowhere, I heard a soft knock on the door. My heart raced as I opened it to find Leo standing there, his expression a mix of concern and something deeper. Hey, he said, his voice low and inviting. I thought I'd check on you. Hi, I managed to say, my heart pounding in my chest. There was an electric charge in the air, and I could feel it pulling us closer. I'm glad you stopped by. As we moved to the living room, the silence between us was thick. I could sense the unspoken words hanging in the air, heavy with meaning. You've been on my mind, Leo admitted, his eyes searching mine. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm trying to be, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I felt vulnerable, exposed in a way I hadn't experienced in years. It's just been a lot lately. Leo stepped closer, the space between us shrinking. You don't have to pretend with me, he said softly, his gaze steady. I can see it in your eyes. You're struggling. I took a deep breath, my heart racing at the proximity. It's complicated, I said, my voice trembling. I'm married. I have a daughter. I shouldn't even be thinking about this. Thinking about what? He asked, his brow furrowing slightly. About wanting to feel alive? About wanting more? His words struck a chord deep within me. It was as if he could see right through the layers of guilt and fear I had wrapped around myself. I hesitated, the weight of my confession heavy on my tongue. I started, but the words caught in my throat. The tension between us crackled, and before I knew it, I stepped closer. Our bodies brushed against each other, and it felt like a spark igniting. I could see the desire in his eyes, mirroring my own longing. I can't just pretend anymore, I finally said, my voice shaking with uncertainty. Leo reached out, his hand gently taking mine. You don't have to, he said, his voice low and soothing. Let's just see where this goes. In that moment, it felt like time stood still. All my fears, all my guilt, faded away as I leaned into him. I shouldn't have, but the impulse was too strong to resist. I found myself kissing him, the warmth of his body enveloping me. It was a moment of sheer passion, drowning out every voice of reason that screamed in my head. But as soon as our lips touched, reality crashed back in. I pulled away, breathless and wide-eyed. What have I done? I gasped, my heart hammering in my chest. Leo's expression shifted from desire to concern. We can stop, he said, his voice steady but gentle. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. I shook my head, overwhelmed by a wave of guilt. No, I wanted to. But I'm married. I have Mia. What if Alan finds out? What if this ruins everything? Panic surged through me, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Hey, Leo said softly, stepping closer again. You need to think about what you want. This feeling between us is real, but you have to decide what it means for you. I closed my eyes, trying to gather my thoughts. The pleasure of the kiss lingered, but it was overshadowed by the guilt that settled over me like a heavy blanket. I can't believe I let this happen, I murmured, my voice shaking. Leo reached out, brushing his thumb against my cheek. You're not alone in this. Just take a breath. We can figure it out together. But as I stood there in the dim light of the living room, I couldn't shake the haunting reflection of what I had done. I had betrayed my husband in a moment of weakness, and now I was left grappling with the reality of my actions. The warmth I felt with Leo was intoxicating, but it came at a heavy price. I felt lost, caught between the life I had built and the desires that threatened to unravel it all. As I sat in the dim light of the living room, the weight of my choices pressed heavily on my chest. The kiss with Leo felt like a flame, warm and bright, but now that warmth was fading, replaced by a chilling realization of what I had done. I stared at the wall, the silence around me almost deafening, filled only with the echoes of my guilt. What had I been thinking? I had crossed a line that I could never uncross. My mind raced back to Mia, her innocent smile, her laughter filling our home. The thought of her finding out about my betrayal twisted my stomach into knots. How could I do this? I whispered to myself, my voice barely breaking the silence. Then, my phone buzzed on the coffee table, jolting me from my thoughts. It was a message from Leo. Can we talk? I need to see you. My heart raced at the thought of facing him again. What more could there be to say? But another part of me craved that connection, that understanding we had shared. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Okay, I typed back, my fingers shaking slightly. Where? Your place. I'll be there soon. The message sent, I felt my heart sink and soar at the same time. I had to confront the reality of what we had done. As the minutes ticked by, I paced the floor, my mind swirling with questions. Was this a moment of weakness or a cry for help in a failing marriage? When Leo finally arrived, I opened the door with a mix of anticipation and dread. He stepped inside, and the air seemed to crackle with tension. "Hey," he said softly, his eyes searching mine. "Hi," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." "Yeah, we do," he agreed, his tone serious. "I've been thinking about everything." I nodded, feeling the lump in my throat grow. "Me too. I can't stop thinking about Mia. What if she finds out? What if this ruins her life?" Leo stepped closer, his expression earnest. "I know. I've thought about that too. But we can't ignore what happened between us. It was real." "Real or not, it feels like a betrayal," I said, my voice trembling. "I've betrayed Alan, and I've betrayed my daughter. I don't know how to fix this." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly grappling with his own emotions. "I don't want to complicate your life even more. But we have to be honest about what we feel. This connection is strong. But at what cost?" I shot back, my frustration bubbling up. "I have a family, Leo. I can't just walk away from that." "I'm not asking you to walk away," he replied, his voice steady. "I'm just saying we need to talk about it. We need to figure out what this means." I sighed, feeling the pressure of our conversation. "What do you want from me?" "I want to understand where we stand," Leo said, his gaze unwavering. "I want to know if you see a future in this, or if it was just a moment." A moment. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. "It felt like more than just a moment," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm scared. I don't want to hurt anyone." "I get that," he replied, his expression softening. "But you have to think about what you want. What makes you happy?" I closed my eyes, trying to gather my thoughts. The warmth of his presence was comforting, but it only made my guilt feel sharper. "I don't know what makes me happy anymore. I've lost sight of that," I said, tears welling up in my eyes. "Hey," Leo said gently, stepping closer and placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone in this. We can figure it out together." But could we really? As I stood there, facing the reality of my choices, I felt torn between the life I had built and the desires that threatened to unravel it all. The moment of clarity I needed felt just out of reach, like a distant dream slipping away. As I moved through the house, the silence felt heavy, wrapping around me like a thick blanket. Mia was at a friend's house, and I was left to face the storm brewing inside me. I forced myself to smile as I set the table for dinner, but inside, I felt like I was crumbling. Each clink of the plates echoed my guilt, reminding me of the kiss with Leo and the choices I had made that day. "Just act normal," I whispered to myself, hoping to convince my reflection in the window. But how could I? My heart raced with the weight of my secret. I thought of Mia, her laughter that filled every corner of our home. What if she knew? What would she think of me? As I finished setting the table, my thoughts drifted back to Alan. I remembered our wedding day, the joy we shared, and the plans we made. But now, those memories felt like a distant echo. I looked around our home, searching for any traces of the love we once had. The walls, once alive with laughter, now seemed to close in on me. I sat on the edge of the couch, feeling the familiar ache of regret. What happened to us? I asked the empty room. I could see the cracks in our marriage, the moments we had let slip away. Our conversations had turned into routines, and the warmth we once shared had given way to a cold distance. I picked up my phone, scrolling through old pictures of Alan and me, smiling and carefree. I felt a pang in my chest as I remembered those times. We can fix this, I thought. But could we really? The thought of facing Alan and admitting my betrayal felt impossible. Just then, the front door creaked open, and I heard Alan's voice. "Hey, I'm home." His cheerful tone pierced through my thoughts, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "Hi," I called back, forcing a smile. I stood up, trying to shake off the heaviness in my heart. He walked into the living room, his face lighting up when he saw me. "What's for dinner?" he asked, looking around. "Just the usual," I replied, my voice shaky. I busied myself in the kitchen, avoiding his gaze. I could feel the tension building between us, like a rubber band stretched too tight. As we ate, Alan chatted about his day, but I struggled to focus on his words. My mind was racing, replaying the moment with Leo and the guilt that gnawed at me. I could feel Alan's eyes on me, searching, as if he sensed that something was wrong. "Are you okay?" he finally asked, concern creeping into his voice. "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied, my heart pounding. "Are you sure? You seem a bit distant." His question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. "Just tired," I replied, forcing a smile. But the truth was I was tired of lying, tired of hiding the chaos inside me. After dinner, we cleaned up in silence. I felt the weight of my secret pressing down on me, and I knew I couldn't keep it hidden forever. The moment of truth was coming, and I could feel the ground shifting beneath my feet. As we settled on the couch to watch TV, Alan reached for my hand. I felt a rush of warmth, but it only deepened my guilt. "I love you," he said softly, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "I love you too," I whispered, but the words felt hollow. How could I say that when I had betrayed him? As the evening wore on, I knew I couldn't keep living this lie. I had to confront my reality, to face Alan and the choices I had made. I drew a deep breath, trying to gather my courage. "Alan, we need to talk," I said finally, my voice shaking. He turned to me, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. "What's wrong?" I don't know how to say this," I stammered. "Just tell me," he urged, his eyes locked onto mine. And in that moment, I realized that the truth, no matter how painful, had to come out. My heart raced, knowing the weight of the words I was about to say. I felt the walls closing in, but I had to break free. I had to face the consequences of my actions. The days that followed felt like a blur, each moment heavy with the weight of my choices. The betrayal hung in the air between Leo and me, an unspoken truth that twisted in my stomach. I knew I had to face him, to confront what we had done. It was time to talk. When I finally agreed to meet Leo, my heart raced. I chose a small cafe, a place filled with chatter and laughter, hoping the noise would drown out the chaos inside me. I arrived early, fidgeting with my hands on the table. Each passing minute felt like an eternity, and when I finally saw him walk in, a tight knot formed in my chest. "Hey," he said softly, sliding into the seat across from me. His eyes looked troubled, mirroring my own feelings. "Hey," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "We need to talk." "Yeah," he nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "About what happened?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of those words. "I don't know what we were thinking. It was a mistake, Leo. I shouldn't have let it happen." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration clear on his face. "But it felt real, didn't it? I can't just pretend it didn't happen." "I know," I sighed, feeling the tears welling in my eyes. "But I have a family. I can't throw everything away because of a moment of weakness." "Your feelings matter too," he argued, his voice rising slightly. "We can't ignore what we shared." "What we shared?" I echoed, anger bubbling up. "What about Mia? What about Alan? I can't hurt them like this." Leo leaned back in his chair, his expression softening. "I get it. I really do. But you can't just shut off your feelings. That will only hurt you more." I looked down at my hands, the guilt wrapping around my heart like a vice. "I know I need to seek forgiveness, especially from Mia. I can't let her see me like this. She deserves better. Have you talked to her yet? He asked. No, I shook my head, dread filling my stomach. I don't know how to explain this to her. How do you tell your child that you've messed up? You have to be honest, he said. She'll feel your pain, and she'll want to understand. Kids are more resilient than we think. His words lingered in the air, but I felt a wave of despair wash over me. But trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. What if she can't forgive me? Then you'll have to show her that you're trying. It's a process, he replied, his voice gentle. But you can't just run away from this. I took a moment to collect my thoughts. And what about us, Leo? What does this mean for us? He sighed, looking out the window. I don't know. I didn't want to become a part of this chaos. But I also can't pretend I don't care about you. You've awakened something in me that I thought was lost. You need to figure out what you want. I felt tears slip down my cheeks as I realized the truth in his words. I need to choose my family. I have to fix what I've broken. Leo reached across the table, his hand brushing against mine. I'll support you, whatever you decide. Just know that you're not alone in this. I pulled my hand back, the warmth of his touch igniting a conflict inside me. I need to go, I said, standing up abruptly. I need to face Mia. Just be honest with her, Leo said, his voice steady. And with yourself. As I walked away from the cafe, the weight of my choices pressed down on me. I knew this was just the beginning of a painful journey. I had to mend the rift between my desires and my responsibilities. With each step, I felt the gravity of my betrayal, but I also felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to rebuild the trust one had shattered. When I arrived home, the house was quiet. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had to try. For Mia. For Alan. And for myself. I had to face my reality and the consequences of my actions. It was time to seek forgiveness and begin the long road to healing. Share this story if you believe that honesty and courage can mend even the deepest wounds. Leave a comment about a time when you had to confront a difficult truth, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories like this one. Let's navigate the complexities of love and family together.